We have a crazy amount of people living on the streets of our San Diego communities. It didn't used to be this way. But few understand how we got to this point. Lost in the confusion, typecast by many, and often misunderstood by those trying to help, are our neighbors at the center of this tragedy. The men, women, and children experiencing homelessness in San Diego. Homeless in San Diego is a podcast that shares their stories, digs into the key issues, and each episode provides our listeners with a clear, easy call to action. Want to truly understand homelessness? Want to help? You're in the right place. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Homeless in San Diego. I'm your host, Greg Angel, CEO of Interfaith Community Services. I am joined by Sarah Gomez today. Sarah works at Cal State San Marcos and is an alumna of Cal State San Marcos and is here to tell us about your journey. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So did you do your undergrad at Cal State also?
Yes, I did.
Wow. So undergrad and then...
Graduate. Yeah.
And what's your graduate degree in?
Master's in biology.
Okay. And we were just talking a minute ago, you're working at the university now.
Yes. So right now I'm a instructional technician in Science Hall 2 in the biology department. And I also work as an academic coach with the McNair Scholars Program.
And as an academic coach, what do you do?
Pretty much like motivating the students, trying to see how their academic life, is it going well in like a holistic approach to everything that they have going on in their home life, so not necessarily are the classes well fitting, but how are they doing in their classes?
And so how many students do you work with?
It's 25.
Okay. And how long do you work with them, over the course of a year? Or?
It's a 2-year program. So if they come in at the 2-year mark, then of course 2 years, but the shortest amount of time will be 1 year. And so I make appointments with them once a week, or however often our schedules can meet together, and just see how things going. If there's whatever insecurities they have, also whether it's financial or food, try to hook them up with those resources to help them.
Well, I can only imagine you're really good at that job, because the reason that you and I connected today is what you have overcome in the last few years. And so we'll get to that in a minute. But if we go a little farther back, you're a Marine veteran.
Yes.
So how long were you in the Marine Corps?
4 years.
Okay. And what did you do in the Marines?
I was aviation supply. So I worked at Mouse 39 right here at Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
Stockton, California.
Did the Marines bring you down here? Or?
Yes, and I loved it and haven't left.
Okay. And you're a mom?
I'm a mom. I have 2 kids, 14-year-old boy and 16-year-old girl.
And so can you share with our listeners what your life was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or however far back you want to go, and then kind of what led to you getting to Interfaith Community Services, getting to meet you and work with you?
So I would say it was like around 2011. I thought everything was fine. We had our it was like 1,800 square foot house, 4-bedroom. We had our quads, our bikes, because we like to go desert riding. We had our camper. I was in school full time, but I was also stay-at-home mom, so I didn't work. My husband was in the Marine Corps at the time, and he was doing his 20s, so I think he was reached maybe 19 years in. And so our life plan was that I was going to continue my education and go to graduate school to get my PhD, and he was going to be a stay-at-home dad when he retired.
Because you were finishing up your undergrad,
right? I was finishing up my undergrad.
And the home that you were living in, that was a home you owned.
Yes, we owned that home.
And that wasn't the first home that you owned.
That was my 3rd home that I owned. So my first house I purchased when I was 18.
When you were 18 years old?
Yes.
How did you do that?
VA loan. I just didn't have any debt. I was very frugal, and I bought a house. I didn't want to live in an apartment. I knew my mom was going to come live with me, and we had lived in an apartment all our lives, and I wanted something to say that was ours. So I just tried, and I mean, the worst could happen would be I'd be back in an apartment, but I qualified, and I got my first house at 18 out the back gate of Camp Pendleton. Wow,
that's cool. And you were telling me before the show that financially you did well in that transaction, and you ended up selling the home, right? Netting some cash, and then you went to Japan at some point, right?
Yes. So That was the first house. On the second house, I made some more cash off of that house. And then he got orders to Japan, and we left in 2003 to Japan. We sold the house, and so now we had that little nest egg.
Mm-hmm.
When we came back from Japan in 2007, we purchased another house, and that was the house that I thought that we were going to retire there, and that would be our forever home.
Okay. And so you were telling our listeners about you're finishing up your undergrad. Your then husband is looking at re-upping another term in the Marines.
Right. Well, he was doing he agreed to do another additional 2 years in the Marine Corps, 22 years, so that he can get, I don't know if it's an increase in the GI Bill or something, so that I can continue my education, so the money for it. Okay. And I remember specifically, it was one night, and we're laying down in bed, and he turns to me, he says, "I have something to tell you." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he says, "I'm being investigated." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because I thought, like, this is just odd. He's like, I'm being investigated. The military is looking into me, and they want to know what I've been up to. And I remember I get back up, I turn the light, and like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well," he just goes into a story. He was just, doing some things that were inappropriate, and he's being investigated, and they're looking into everything that he's been doing for quite a while, and which I had no idea. It was as though it's like those Hallmark movies, right, where he was living a double life, and I had no idea.
That's crazy.
And so 1 year after that, he gets sentenced to jail for 4 years in the military brig. And that's when everything came to light, was that all that nest egg that I had accumulated or I had saved, he had squandered it, made really poor investments in the house that we were living. Even though we had put $100,000 down on it, he was doing, I think he was refinancing it every 6 months. So we weren't paying anything down on the payment, right? And we were actually owing more money every time he was refinancing. And so there was nothing I could do, because I was thinking, with the nest egg, I can make some payments on our house and try to keep it. But it was pointless. And so, everything just happened so fast. It was just unbelievable to think that one day I'm laying in bed and I thought I was on top of the world, and the next thing we were losing everything. And he was in jail, and I was just thinking, he's got 3 meals a day, and how am I going to make, what am I going to make for dinner for my kids? Or it was just so fast.
Wow, I'm so sorry. That's such an awful story. And like you said, it almost sounds like it's out of a movie, with how just kind of out of the blue it is. And so what did you do?
I squatted in my house for as long as I could, right? And unfortunately, we had to move within months, I would say within 3 months of no longer making those payments. And then I was able to rent an apartment. So I had...
So hold on. So from the time when he goes to jail and to the time you had to move out of your home that you thought was obviously pretty secure.
Right.
It was just a few months?
It was just a few months. Wow. And so I do remember we had about $60,000 saved, and that was all he was able to give me. But I also filed for divorce, and I learned a very hard lesson that even though I had the kids full-time custody and he was in jail, I still had to share everything 50-50 with him. Wow. So that took a chunk out of my savings, right? So I had a plan. My plan was to get an apartment, right? So we downgraded to the cheapest apartment that I could find at the time, and continue going to school. And
are you in grad school, or are you still finishing up undergrad?
I'm finishing up undergrad. So now I'm in my senior year, and we're in an apartment, and everything happened so fast. I remember I was just giving furniture away because I didn't know what to do with everything. And from a 4-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom apartment, there was a lot of stuff I just couldn't take with us. Yeah. And so that transition was just hard. And so everything was going well. I did get accepted to Cal State San Marcos, and that was great. And so when I started going there, now I'm in graduate school. I'm noticing that once I had to share with him half of the little bit of money I have left, I had to move I moved again to a different apartment that was cheaper. And so the plan was, right, to keep this up, finish school, and just move back home, right, to Stockton, California.
Okay.
But what happened was that what was like another blow to me was when he got prosecuted in the Marine Corps, the GI Bill is a privilege, right? And so any money that the Marine Corps pays to you for your education, they have the right to take it back because you are no longer behaving according to Marine Corps standards.
Sure.
And so that's exactly what happened to me. So
Wow.
I'm already my last year it's 2015. It's my last year of grad school. I just need to write my thesis, right? And I was banking, so I had depleted my savings. Everything was pretty much gone. I remember getting a letter in the mail, and my plan was I needed my tax return to carry out my last few months so I can finish grad school. My plan was to send my kids up north to live with my sister for the summer. I was going to then downgrade again to move into rent one room because I'm counting pennies now, right? To rent one room. And that way I can do my writing, by myself, renting a room from somebody, and my kids would be safe and fed with my sister.
It's a great plan.
Okay. Well, when that summer, when I got my tax return, I got a letter instead from the IRS saying that they garnished all of my tax return because of the GI Bill. They took their money back.
Do you remember when that letter came?
Oh my gosh. It came in, I want to say, in June.
In June, because your plan was
May.
For your kids to go and live with your sister that summer. So, I mean, this is like
Right. So this is like right at the end. So I want to say it was like May. It was May, June, because I knew my kids were getting out of school and I'd have to send them up. And so when I got the letter, realizing I don't have any money anymore that I was counting on. And then when I went to tell the person that I was renting the room from, like I already planned, I'm sorry, I can't send my kids. I couldn't send my kids up north because I remember that then he also got out of jail at the same time. And I was too afraid to have the kids up there without me. I said, can my kids also live with me? And can I have a reduction in rent? And they were like, of course not. There's no way.
Yeah.
So it was just like everything was collapsing at once. And that I lost the apartment. I mean, I couldn't I didn't have the money to extend the apartment. And plus I had to return in, like sign everything. I will be moved out at the end of June. And so July, right, was when everything was supposed to kick off and this plan was supposed to take place. And it just...
Wow. And all of that was within just a couple of years of having been in your own place and having a very different security or sense of what life was.
Absolutely. It was very, very difficult, not only for me, but for my children also. Yeah. I remember once I'm in the store, we're shopping at Ross and I need some shoes, but I really don't have the money to buy the shoes. And I'm like petting the shoes, I'm picking them up and holding them, turning them over. And my daughter's with me. And man, she must have been about 11 or something. And I put the shoes back and I commented to her. I said, let's just go get what we need. I said, and I said, it's just so hard for me, Bea, because I need shoes and it's just so hard for me to not be able to buy what I want. And she says, she snapped at me. She says, you, she's like, what about me? I'm a kid. I want everything. And it just broke my heart. She's having her own struggles. And I didn't realize that.
So what did you do? What came next?
What came next after that situation with Bea? I just apologized to her and I told her, you're right and I'm sorry, but
no,
no.
Like what as the apartment fell through and as June is ending and July is coming, what did you do at that point?
So at that point I was then homeless, right? Because I have no financial means to do anything for myself. I asked her girlfriend and if I could move in with her. She lived all the way in Chula Vista.
Okay.
And so I said yes. I mean, of course she said yes. She's an amazing girlfriend that I've been friends since the Marine Corps, right? And so I stayed with her for a while and she told me at the same time her boyfriend was moving in and that was later on is why I had to move from her place because just the tension between her boyfriend and my son. My mentality has always been the choices I'm making, I have a responsibility to raise two functioning adults in society, regardless of what's happening, right? And so just the tension between her and my son. And my son was a kid. He's 9, 10.
Yeah.
And I just told her, I can't be here. I thank you. I thanked her for her generosity, and I really appreciate her. But I can't. For the sake of my son, this is not for us. He doesn't deserve this, and he's just a kid. And so I moved.
And that motivation to move out of a situation that's either like unstable, staying with a friend, or moving out of a situation that, you know, your name's on a lease, but there's other things going on. We've heard many times on this show, and I think for our listeners, it's important to understand that a lot of people are really prioritizing their kids and their kids' safety and understanding, listen, this may not be the best in the short term. We may be moving into a less stable or more, you know, risky situation, but long term, I know for my kids, I got to do something different.
Right.
So you're part of a larger group, really prioritizing your kids.
Right, because I didn't want them to think that, you know, I know we're homeless and we're at the mercy of this person, but that doesn't mean we have to take whatever inappropriate behavior. I have to be a victim of whatever it is that they have going on. You know, if they can't communicate well, that's not my problem.
So as a veteran, you eventually reached out to access some VA benefits, right?
Actually, yes. But so I left her house. You know, I went to another Marine friend, and I just knocked on the door and I said, "Can I stay here?" So
this is the unofficial of veteran benefits, right?
Right. So that's
going from, you know, all utilizing your network, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
smart.
And so definitely was going friend to friend for a little while, and it's hard though, because, you know, even though these people love me, it's so difficult when you're coming from a place of your own. You can open your fridge and get whatever you want. You know, everyone, you know, these friends, they shared with me, but it's just that feeling of uncomfortableness. You can't ever get comfortable in someone else's space. And so when I moved into my friend's house, that's the first thing I did was Google. I Googled the homeless veterans in San Diego, and that's how I found the Oceanside Clinic. And they said they interview veterans at 6 a.m. It's like Tuesday, Thursday, sometime.
Yeah.
And I just went at 5 a.m. to make sure I was the first person in line.
So you go there for the interview, and what happens?
I go there for the interview, and, you know, it's a questionnaire, lots and lots of questions. And I remember he's looking over my application. He's asking me, you know, he's just verifying. So you're not in a situation that's of abuse, like someone's not beating you? I said, no. He's like, have you been kicked out of your house? I mean, kicked out of your apartment due to abuse, like someone's hurting you? No. You know, are you on drugs? No, I've never done drugs. You know, do you have a problem with alcohol? Like all this stuff. I said, no, I've never drank, and I've never done drugs, and I don't even smoke cigarettes. It's just, I just don't have anywhere to go. And he just told me, he's like, you know, I'm sorry, but if you had said yes to any of these, we could have put you in someplace right now. He says, but since you're not in any of those circumstances, you'll just have to wait. And he said, we'll take your information and we'll contact you later. And I was just heartbroken. It's just how come, I don't know, I feel like I've worked so hard, and how come no one can help someone like me?
It must have been a really crappy feeling.
Right, just to walk away and thinking I still don't have anywhere, you know, I'm still have to share a bed with my kids. It's just. So what happened from there? So from there, I waited, and it wasn't long though. It was about a month, and then someone called me from Interfaith, and they asked me if I needed a place still. I said, absolutely.
Yes.
And so they helped me. They said I was working part-time. They said my income wasn't enough, and I needed to get on welfare. And I never thought of getting on welfare. You know, that has to do with back in childhood, trying to be self-sufficient.
Sure. And was the outreach from Interfaith Community Services, was that a result of you meeting with the VA? Yes. Okay. So the VA put out the Interfaith in contact with me. And so it was a huge blessing. And so Interfaith, they told me what I need to do. You know, you need to get on welfare. You need to have some sort of income more than what you're making now. And then we'll see about, we can get you an apartment. And they're telling me, like, you need to do this quickly. It takes about a month to get on welfare. And then we have an apartment coming up in, 45 days. So, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was great. They're letting me know what's going to happen. And so,
do you remember what time of year this is? 'Cause you were talking about,
Yes. So this was in it was 2015, and I remember this was it was the summer of 2015, right? Because
So it's still in that summer because you like when things kind of fell apart, and then you're with a friend. So it's still that same summer,
right? Because
okay.
I remember I've moved into the apartment when Interfaith gave me the apartment for military veterans. I moved in November of 2015.
Okay.
And that was just amazing.
And so Interfaith helped you secure welfare benefits. What was that like? I mean, you talked about you always want to be self-sufficient. You bought your own house at 18 years old, for crying out loud. So what was that process like? And, just...
That was hard for me, sitting in the waiting room, waiting for my number to be called, and just sitting there, and I see, all these other families, whether they're in need or not. And I'll be honest, I was very judgmental. I remember seeing a woman, she's standing there, she's got her coach scarf and like really nice shoes, and I was thinking, why is she here?
Oh, interesting.
Right. And so I was just angry. I was angry for all those years when I lost the house. I was just angry.
Yeah.
And it was hard, I was speaking to the woman that was handling my case. She was just surprised. She's like, you're in school and you're getting your master's? And I said, yes. And she was just in awe. She was just, praising me too. She's like, you're amazing. You're really inspiring. And she's talking about how she wants to go back and get her master's. Like, you should do it. And she had her own hardship story too. She was actually taking care of a nephew or something. So, we're learning, this experience helped me learn that there's a lot of stories out there.
Well, she was right. You are inspiring, Sarah, and you were prioritizing your kids throughout this whole process. You were completing your graduates, your master's degree in biology.
Yes.
Right. And so through Interfaith, it was a program called that the VA funds, called Supportive Services for Veteran Families. The grant that helped you and your family actually went away 2 years ago. And we're in the process of trying to bring it back to our North County community. It was about $1 million a year that went to help families in your situation to either prevent or overcome homelessness, veteran families. And that resource has gone away in the meantime. So hopefully it'll be coming back because there's a lot of other people, unfortunately, in similar situations. And so that assistance helped you move into an apartment. And you said you moved in November. And so it's your own place. You got your name on a lease. It's your home, right?
Yes. And so the way the program was, though, I don't think that with my circumstances, I had no money. I mean, there was times where I remember I remember checking my bank account on the phone, and I have like $20, and I'm thinking, okay, I have to do laundry, but I have to buy groceries, but I can't buy groceries because it's only $20, but I need gas in the car. So I'm like, what do I do? And I just, breaking down, crying, and just praying, asking God, like, how do I continue to the next day? Even though, during those times where I had the apartment, but we're eating quesadillas every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Up to this day, my son will not eat a quesadilla because I couldn't afford the food, right, that we needed. And so when I was, no money, financially broke, and Interfaith put me in this apartment, the program that I was in was what really changed my life, because I had to, I'm on welfare, so now I'm using that money to pay my rent. But what Interfaith did was that they paid that first rent for me. And that made such a big difference, because with the money that I would have paid during rent, I use it to pay off some of my credit cards. Because, of course, when times are hard, you just charge everything.
Yeah.
So I have this ridiculous debt. And so it was a step program. They paid, I want to say, the first 2 or 3 months rent for me. And I've always been smart with my money, so I used the money to pay down some cards so that once I was taking over the payments of the rent, I could make it and not put myself in a position where I would lose this apartment that I'm in.
Wow.
And so
that was the end of 2015. It's 2019 now. How are things going?
Oh my gosh. It's going good. It's going good. I remarried.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, that's so cool. How'd you meet your husband?
We met at church.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
We met at church. So that was good. I was volunteering. So I'm trying to teach the kids, right, community service. So we volunteer at the church, And that's how we met. He was making his coffee and I'm cleaning the coffee table.
That's so cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so the kids are doing good. I always try to stay local, and that's been my biggest issue was being healthy for them. During that time, I did have to go see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I knew I had an issue because when we were in this apartment on the Nettleton Road, the one Interfaith put me in, I remember my daughter, she's laughing at the top of the stairs, and she's laughing and giggling, and her laugh couldn't make me smile. And I didn't even find anything remotely funny. And that was my key to me that something's wrong with me. Like I need help. Like I need counsel. I need to talk to somebody. And it's hard, it's just, I was just angry, really angry.
Well, you had a lot to be angry about, and I am so inspired by you and your leadership and your strength to overcome everything that happened, and to create this wonderful life for your kids, to be a successful leader at Cal State San Marcos and helping other students. I'm totally blown away, and for our listeners, I think it's important to think about how difficult, how turbulent your journey has been, and how much worse it could have been if you weren't able to get into housing. And you talked about addressing PTSD and those issues. How much harder it would be to try to overcome any of those things if you were homeless. And so that's really what one of the things we focus on at Interfaith is, we got to get people housed if they're not housed, or if they're at risk of losing their housing. Like, let's do everything we can to keep them housed, because there's enough challenges in this world and in life, right? It gets a hell of a lot harder if you don't have a roof over your head. Absolutely.
And then I think about those families that don't have the privilege of being in the Marine Corps or the military, right? Because that's where I got my counseling was through the military.
And the rental assistance program came through the VA,
right,
through the military as well.
Yeah, all those families that don't have that privilege.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is a segue to the end of our show, our call to action for today. So Sarah, our listeners are totally engrossed. They're like totally connected with you, and they want to know, okay, how can they help? What can they do to help others?
Definitely give to programs like Interfaith. Interfaith is what, I was, couch surfing and all those on my own. But if it wasn't for Interfaith, then I'd be one of those families on the corner too. And so it's unfortunate that that program isn't there, but definitely give to programs like this, programs that have an outline and counselors so that they can guide these people that, like me, that are homeless, on what's the next step, So I remember Katie, my counselor, she, it's always encouraging to see her, and we always had a plan, and that was what really made a difference. And she's telling me, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to do to make it happen. And it's why we're here today.
Well said. Well said. Our listeners can also advocate to their elected leaders, to your mayors, to your council members, to the county supervisors, if you're here in the county of San Diego, to your congressional representatives, to prioritize government grants that help families and moms like Sarah to either overcome or prevent homelessness. Oftentimes, homeless funding is prioritized for individuals who have been homeless for long periods of time, who have multiple disabling conditions, and that is important. That is needed, but we cannot do that at the loss of support for families who need a much lighter touch, and through their own abilities and their strengths are able to overcome so much, but we need to keep them from falling farther down. So we need more resources for homeless prevention in particular. At Interfaith, we have a special donor fund that people can support for that. We'll have information on all this on our podcast website, homelessinsandiego.org. And we are also filming today's episode for the very first time. So Sarah, thanks for being a part of our very first filmed podcast. So if you want to see what this looks like to create a little radio show, you can check us out. We'll have that on the website too. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I hope that I made a difference. sharing my story.
I know you have, and I really appreciate you being strong and sharing your journey, because I know you're doing this with the hope that you can help others by doing it.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Thank you for who you are.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for listening, and for those watching. Thanks for watching. We will talk to you again soon on Homeless in San Diego. Thanks, everyone.